Hello. Still no intro. I don't know. Let's just get on with it. This is now episode 3 in the series, and, well, today I'm thinking we'll do something a little different, which is to say, not train related, because I actually went to college for architectural technologies, and of course that involves designing buildings. And, well, since I've been making 3D models for the last little while, a few of those models have been buildings. Now, I haven't actually finished a lot of those, and, well, that kind of means that I have a bunch of floor plans lying around and just buildings in varying states of completion. And today, I want to move towards finishing one of those unfinished models. This is a project that I called simply and unimaginatively the commercial tower. At the moment of starting, it has 20 floors, with the first 2 floors containing shops and restaurants, and all above containing offices. The building is 300 feet wide, 150 feet deep, 222 feet tall, later to be 232 feet tall. We'll get into that later. I forgot to get the exact floor area of the building before designing the interiors and such, but a rough estimate of the total floor area would be about 800,000 square feet. I started the model in late 2021, designing all of the floor plans and starting the exterior walls. I eventually stopped, however, because, well, I believe I didn't have any idea how I wanted to actually do the exterior, so I just sort of left it alone. Now, you may have noticed a few sort of unusual things about the model, and I think the first is all of the bright colors. Now, the reason it's covered in just bright colors is because in SketchUp, I prefer to avoid using the labels provided by SketchUp to label specific rooms, and I prefer to use color coding simply because, well, for one, I think it's a lot more intuitive. I can just look at a certain color and say, yep, I know exactly what that purpose that room serves. Whereas with the label, I have to sort of zoom in. And of course, it's not helped by the fact that SketchUp's labels are, to be frank, utter dog shit. And they're just completely useless. And to be frank, color coding is just vastly superior, I've found. And the other thing you might have noticed is the lack of a basement. And yes, I know a building like this would need, a bit of a basement. I just didn't really add one at the time. And yeah, I think mainly because I just didn't know exactly what I was going to put in the basement. And yeah, based on the design of the building, it wouldn't be hard to add a basement, so it's not the end of the world. Now, I'm going to give myself 20 hours to complete the project. However, for this one, I'm not doing it in one part because even with my sort of best, sort of most efficient methods of producing models, there is absolutely no way I'm finishing a building of this size in 20 hours. So instead, my goal for today is to simply finish the exterior of the building, and then in a future part, I would work on the interior of the building, and then a potential third part, I would work on the sort of detail work and just interior details and that sort of thing. So for now, I'm giving myself 20 hours to finish the exterior of the building. So let's get started. So before I get started on the exterior of the building, I need to finish up the interior. And just the reason for that is if I don't have a good idea what the interior looks like, especially the interior floor plans by the exterior walls. And the reason I'm starting with the interior rather than the exterior is I just want to make sure that the floor plans, and especially the floor plans sort of around the exterior of the building, are fine before I start building the exterior in case I need to make some major modification to the interior later on. I don't want to have to also make some modification to the exterior as well. Before I get started on the floor plans, I'll just quickly create a legend so that you would actually know, what each of the colors mean. And next, I will move on to actually reviewing the floor plans. And now, one of the issues with doing a project on my own, especially a building project, is that it's generally useful to have somebody else reviewing the project as well. And again, because I'm on my own, I don't have anyone doing that. So, that means I'm probably going to make a few mistakes that I shouldn't make. But since I originally created this project in late 2021 and we're now, months later, that means that I've, kind of forgotten some of my design rationale on the actual building. And that's actually not the worst thing in the world, because it means that I would actually have to, review the project myself, try and figure out what I was thinking of when I was making certain decisions. And, that actually helps me, sort of figure out if there was anything that I had done wrong. I start with level 1, which contains the lobby, 4 shops, and the building's loading bays. And, well, I didn't make many changes, but I did notice that the bathroom layout was probably not very smart. I originally had it so that there was one male bathroom and one female bathroom, and it occurred to me that that wasn't a very good idea when I thought back to when I was in high school, and, well, when I was in grade 12, my high school had 3 boys' bathrooms, and in the space of about a week, 2 of them were rendered sort of inaccessible because basically people had set the waste paper bins on fire, leading to one bathroom being essentially massively overcrowded. And I thought that, given that these are public bathrooms, it was probably not a good idea to have just one large bathroom, and better to have 2 smaller bathrooms, just so that, again, one waste paper bin catching on fire wouldn't, make everyone incapable of going to the bathroom. I also decided to increase the size of the loading dock, as I thought it was a little too small. I also added some labels, dimensions, and area calculations to the building, more for your benefit than for mine, as adding dimensions, labels, and area calculations are generally a fairly slow, tedious process that wastes a lot of time for me. So, I'd be interested to hear if you actually want it, because I certainly wouldn't mind getting rid of that so I could just, work on stuff that I actually need to work on. And I'm also adding a bunch of people to the model, mainly just sort of understanding the scale of the project, since I find just, putting little people around is often a lot better for understanding the dimensions of a project than actual dimensions, just because, I'm designing buildings for people, and, a dimension isn't quite as useful for understanding how people would interact with a space when compared to, actual people. Next, I moved on to level 2, which contained 2 restaurants and 4 shops. I decided to modify one of the shops to add a shop counter, which I had forgotten to do on the last one, and then added labels and such to the second floor. After finishing up the second floor, the 1 hour mark passed. Next, on to level 3, which contains 4 office spaces and 2 mail rooms. I just modified a storage closet and made a few minor improvements. Next, level 4 contains 4 office spaces with large open to below spaces. I'm not entirely convinced by the open to below design, but it's not really involved with the exterior of the design, so I can leave it for now. Level 5 is identical to level 3, but has the mail rooms replaced with small offices. And fortunately, when I was designing the actual building, I was smart enough to design the building so that basically every floor above level 3 are essentially alternating copies of levels 4 and 5. So really, while it has 20 floors, I'm only having to modify 5 floors. The one exception is level 20, later to become level 21, which is just for roof access. I'm not entirely convinced by the design. I think it's a little inefficient, but, whatever. I don't need to worry about that right now. After that, I just did some organizing and got started on the walls, but as I was starting on the walls, the 2-hour mark passed. I decided that it would be a good idea to split the wall up into a bunch of smaller components, just so that I could, again, reduce the amount of work that I needed to do. And after that, I started adding doors, added loading bay doors, and started adding a bunch of windows, though I found out that I needed to modify some of the office floors to accommodate all of the windows, and, well, that took a little while, so sort of as I was finishing that up, I reached the 4-hour mark. I quickly finished up the basic walls and then moved on to starting the exterior cladding. And, well, I didn't really take any specific inspiration. I just sort of thought it would be a good idea to, sort of add some slightly ornate details to the cladding. So basically, I just started putting shapes together until I got something that I liked. And, I liked the end result. Though my computer did not like the end result, as very quickly it started to lag. And that would be a problem for the rest of the project, because the computer did not like this project for whatever reason. I think it was just a little too complex for it. But I don't really care what my computer thinks about my designs, so I just kept adding bricks until I hit the 6-hour mark. Not much to say about what I did after that. I basically just added some corner pieces and just finished up the upper level details and moved on to the details near the bottom of the building. And while I was working on that, hit the 8-hour mark. As for what I did next, again, not much to say, really. Just kept working on the exterior details for the lower part of the building and kept doing that until I hit the 10-hour mark, meaning that we're halfway through the project. I decided it was time to work on the window and door frames, which I was able to mostly get finished. I also added a space for a nameplate at the front of the building, but I don't have any ideas for a name, so if you have any suggestions, I'd be glad to hear them. At this point, I was nearly finished with the lower exterior wall details, which is good because I had now hit the 12-hour mark. I decided that this was the time to duplicate the exterior walls, as I had only been working on half of the walls, but at this point I felt that I had done enough work that it would be fine if I duplicated the walls at this point. Work slowed down a bit here simply because the front entrance area simply required a lot of new brick designs for me to make, and that just obviously slowed things down. But after a bit of work, the exterior details were now complete. At this point, I decided to move on to the windows, and I started with the office windows, which were just fairly simple opening 2-pane window designs, and while I was working on sort of the basic design, I reached the 14-hour mark. I quickly finished the basic office window design and then added it to the existing window frame component that I'd created, just for simplicity, since that would essentially mean it was copied across the entire model without me having to do that manually, which at this point was a necessity for keeping on time. Next, I moved on to the more complicated lower windows, and by the 16-hour mark, the windows were now mostly done. However, looking at the amount of work I had left at this point, I realized I was probably not going to finish the project in the amount of time I had left. So I did my best, however, and moved on to trying to finish the windows, which went well. Then moved on to the roof crowning, and that also went well. Was able to finish that very quickly, and then started on the doors. But as I was starting on the doors, I hit the 18-hour mark. With only 2 hours left, I quickly finished the doors, and worked on the frame details, which I was also able to complete fairly quickly. After that, I started working on the side brickwork because I had the idea that rather than just leaving the wall blank and just texturing it later or something, I had the idea to actually create three-dimensional brickwork. And my computer could not handle my 3D brickwork, and basically the leg was absolutely unmanageable, which I think ruined just about any remaining chance I had to actually finish the project in time because I was just struggling with leg so much. Eventually, I had to modify the edge styles so that the computer could actually, handle my brickwork. But it didn't account for much as time soon ran out. And, well, that's 20 hours. So, let's see what I got done. And here's the final product. The project is unfortunately not complete, as I have not done the exterior wall detailing, or it's lagging out, great, or the loading bay doors. I have done, there we are, there's the door. Took a second to load in. Like I said, the computer does not like this project, though I would say on the whole I do like the project. I'm quite happy with it, although one thing I'm not happy about is the fact that, because of the aforementioned tasks that were not completed, that means the challenge was failed. But, I mean, on the whole, I like the project, if it'll load. Is the project going to load? Oh dear. There we are. By the way, I did give it some coloring, sort of off-screen, just as a sort of an experiment. I'm not particularly happy with it, and we'll probably change it or get rid of it, so I don't really count that as being part of the actual project. But overall, I would say that, I'm quite happy with the end result. Now, I think the reason I failed the challenge is, well, I think primarily I spent a little too much time focusing on the interior details, the interior floor plans, which, while it was important that I did some of them could have waited until I actually worked on the interior of the building. And I think in the sort of other parts of the project, I just wasn't working as fast as I could. And, if I'd been working a little faster, I probably would have been able to get it done. And I think the third issue is just, there was a lot of detail work. There's so much it can't even load. And I think the detail work sucked up a lot of time that would have, I think if I had had that time, I would have been able to complete the project, though I'm not too upset about that, as I don't really mind the ornate detail. I mean, I think part of the reason why I did all the ornate detail is partly because I thought it looked all right, but also partly because, when I was in college, anything that looked anywhere near as interesting or complex as this would simply not have been something I would have had any ability to do. Not because I didn't want to, but simply because, well, it was all a bit crap, to be frank, at college. But anyways, I would certainly be interested to hear what you thought about all of the detail. And, well, to give you a better view, I'll try and zoom out, although I can't zoom out that far with all the details on display, as, the SketchUp really starts lagging if I zoom out too far. Personally, I think I slightly overdid the details. Okay, maybe a little more than slightly, but again, I don't think it looks that bad. In fact, I don't mind it at all. Though I think for potential future projects, I might go for something a little simpler, both for my sake, the timer's sake, and for my computer's sake. But overall, I think I'm quite happy with the end result, even if I did fail. So, As for projects I can do next, well, like I said earlier, I have a bunch of unfinished building models sitting around, and, well, they are in varying states of completion, although most of them haven't really progressed beyond the floor plan stage. I have 2 train station models that, well, one is fairly unfinished. I think the floor plans are maybe about 40 to 50% done, some basic wall design, but other than that, not really a lot done on it. And the other one is actually far more completed, because it actually has the floor plans completed, the walls, roof, all completed. And if I recall, the reason I stopped on the project was simply because I just didn't really know how I wanted to do the exterior design, like the actual, general appearance of the thing. And that's the only reason I stopped. Like, that project is actually very far along. I would say maybe even 75% complete, as in basically all I have to do is just do the exterior walls, do the interior walls, and that's basically the project finished. So that's a potential candidate for a video in the near future. As for other projects, I have a partially completed industrial building that I could easily work on again. That one would probably take a bit more work, although simply due to sort of how the project was put together and the fact that I was able to use parts from another project to get it started, that one could actually be done fairly easily as well. And then, well, potentially the most exciting one is I have a very large project, or perhaps better described as a bunch of large projects into one very large project, that basically I have a lot of floor plans done for some very, very large buildings, as in larger than the one you saw today. And I think that, well, most of them are incomplete, although one of them is actually complete, apart from just, floor plan reviews and potential modifications. The rest are, well, some of them are at sort of 90, 80% finished. Some of them are, fairly unfinished, but if you like buildings similar to this, but you would like something maybe a little bigger, I think that some of those projects might be up your alley. But as for the next project, I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be, but I think it's probably not going to be building related. One other project that I've been considering is putting together a subway station. And, well, as part of the sort of previous project, I actually do have some largely completed subway station plans, and I'm certainly interested in doing that, although the problem with that is I don't want to start building a subway station until I've built a subway car for it, just because, well, one, I need dimensions and just all sorts of various details that I would need I would need to have a more or less complete subway train in order to put in the subway station before I would start wanting to design it, simply because, if I get something wrong with a subway train, I don't want to have this, completed subway station sitting around that I now have to largely redesign because, I did things in the wrong order. So before I do the subway stations, I would need to do a subway train first. As for the next project, I'm thinking that, well, I don't think it'll be building related. I think it'll be train related, although I'm not entirely sure what project that'll be yet. It's possible that it might actually be a fairly short video and a fairly short challenge in preparation for a second challenge, but we'll get into that later. But, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you like the project, even if it doesn't load properly because I did far too much detailing on it. And yeah, see you next time.